Hello, Wanderers. Welcome back to the Lost and Found podcast. I'm Amanda Powers, and today's episode is for anyone who is in the middle of a transition right now and quietly wondering, am I doing something wrong? Because here's something I want you to sit with before we even start. What if feeling lost isn't a sign that you're failing, but it's actually a sign that you're doing it exactly right? My guest today, Dr. Saidie Rodriguez, is a physician, speaker, coach, and the host of her own podcast, soulSHINE, The Art of Becoming. And she talks about this exact problem a lot. She calls it authentic integration, the idea that those seasons where we feel the most unmoored, untethered, or the most disconnected from who we thought we were is actually the season where the old version of us is loosening its grip on us so that a truer one can take shape, which honestly is what most of the Lost and Found was built on. So Dr. Saidie works at the intersection of science and soul, and she's helping high-achieving women move from performance to presence and helping them prove to themselves that actually inhabiting their own lives is the way to go. So today we're talking about self-trust, burnout, imposter syndrome, and what it really means to become who you're supposed to be. So Dr. Saidie, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Amanda, I'm so excited to be here. Hello, Amanda. Hello, Wanderers. Thank you for having this space. Thank you to beautiful Amanda for creating such an intentional culture around identity and navigating life through her own journey and your own courageous voice. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have you here. So I wanted to really just kind of hone in on the core of both of our shows, but it's probably the biggest thing that the two of us resonated with each other when we first met is that word becoming. You know, we blend it in with our own shows and our own brands as well, but I want to know what your version is. So when you use the word becoming, what does that actually mean to you right now?
Yeah, such a great question. Thank you. I'll probably give you an answer today and tomorrow might be different. And in 10 years, I actually hope that it's different. At the core, I think of my beliefs is that all of us are on a lifelong journey of growth and evolution. And in that way, we are always expanding and pushing and pulling with life, with our stories of self, with our creation of who we are and who we want to be and who we have been too. I guess we often, I think in coaching, get so focused on the future, which is beautiful, but I guess it goes the other way, doesn't it? Where we've come from and our past. So I guess the only word of not caution, but intentionality I want to bring with becoming is that I think there can be this arrival fallacy that happens, when I become this person of influence, when I become a wife, when I become something else that I'm looking to attain, then I'll feel happy, I'll feel successful, I'll feel peace. And I think that is the beautiful journey of constantly hitting it and still feeling like there is more yet to be discovered and more to be inhabited and experienced. And I don't think becoming is like a promised land. I think where we are exactly as we are is the most beautiful place to be. And in becoming, I don't also want us to forget to be. And we can hold both at the same time. But becoming, I think, invites you to intentionally and purposely dream and identify of who do I want to be? What do I believe? And what is preventing me from being that, believing it, and living it? And how can I deconstruct maybe my own limits to be more authentically expressed?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. And a lot of times in this industry or in the self-help space, I feel like we are, as creators or as potential thought leaders in this particular topic, people are always trying to tell you about how you're becoming or what you will become or how to reach towards your future self. But not as many people are actually talking about how to be okay with where you are right now. People talk about being, it's the messy middle where you struggle the most, but it's also that if you can survive the messy middle, that's exactly when you're going to take off. And it's always the people that give up right before the breakthrough that don't get to become that thing. But truly actually learning to be okay exactly where you are when you're in a very uncomfortable place, that's hard. And even I struggle with that, especially lately. I don't feel like myself, or I don't feel like I'm living up to that future version of myself that I want to be. So sometimes it almost bleeds into that whole imposter syndrome too. So I'm curious for you, how did you get to a place where you were okay just being? Because I know you started your journey into the mindfulness and the coaching aspect, even though you already had on paper what seemed like a really great life. You're a successful doctor, you have a family, you have kids, like you've achieved so many things that so many other women often want. But like you also had to get uncomfortable with yourself and go, you know what, maybe I'm not truly happy right now. So how did you get to that place?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's so many beautiful entry points. For me, it was really like, it's been a lifelong journey of knowing myself more deeply. And I think when you're growing up, you sort of just inherit the expectations or the goals of people around you that you know, that you love, that you trust. And I don't think there's anything like inherently wrong with that. I think that we are all trying the best to inform the future generations and our children of our beliefs. And I think that when we're unconscious to it and we just start conforming, inheriting, people pleasing our way through life, we can end up sort of disconnected from ourselves. And that's how I found myself. I love being a physician. I love taking care of children. I love my own children and family. And there was just a part of me that felt like I was missing something and I didn't know what it was. I didn't have language to it. I just kind of felt like disconnected from myself. I felt like, man, I should be really grateful. I'm healthy. I have a roof over my head. I have so many things. So what is this feeling of disconnect? And it really just came down to expression of myself. I really find a lot of joy in exactly what we're doing, contemplating life, philosophizing, finding beauty in every moment. And I would find myself doing that in little bits and spurts, like at work or at home, in my personal relationships. And that was one of the first clues to like, this isn't just a hobby or like a personality trait of Saidie. Maybe this is part of her own, like just authentic expression that no matter where I go, no matter what circumstance I'm in, I will find that I connect to that it speaks to me, that it lights me up somehow. And yeah, through circumstances of events, my own imposter syndrome and kind of realizing coaching was even a field, I found my way to really resonating with it. And really, for me, it was at first like a gift for me. I didn't even know tools existed out there to help us be aware of our thoughts, to help us deconstruct our thoughts. And from that was an invitation to really understand emotions better, to understand human behavior and my behavior with myself better. And then it became a gift. Yeah. And then I was like, I want to hold this space for everybody. And that's how it sort of became a profession.
Yeah. And I'm sure it ended up probably helping, not that you didn't have good bedside manner, but like maybe it ended up actually helping your relationships with your current patients as well too, or at least improved your ability to get that vulnerability connection with that person. Because I know sometimes, and I'm sure you do too, that you go into the doctor's office and you don't want to tell the full truth because sometimes you're embarrassed to say what's really wrong with you, or you're uncomfortable, or you're in denial about what's going on with you. So you don't really give the full picture to the doctor. And I'm sure that this side quest here that turned into being a career actually helped you in so many other ways besides just internally for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I think this is such a beautiful container to like understand and be curious about humans and our experience. And I think the couple of gifts that, whatever you want to call it, coaching, self-help, consciousness, meta consciousness, meta thinking. I don't know what it's called, but I'm sure there's a million names for it. But at the core of it, I really find it, for me, the repeated theme all just comes down to like loving ourselves more, as cheesy as that sounds, but having a relationship with ourselves for more love. And what's beautiful and reciprocal in that is that the way we are in one place is the way we are with everything. And I was shocked. I remember one of the earlier lessons personally I was always so critical of other people and judgmental and like being in work groups and feeling like either I wasn't good enough or like, when was it going to be my turn? And when I started this relationship with myself and I started softening towards myself and accepting myself and really seeing myself in a different light, I remember being in a meeting and it was like it was a group coalition thing, like a working group. And it was from people from all over the nation. And I was like early in my career. And for the first time, I didn't feel like jealous or judgmental. I was like seeing them with eyes of celebration and appreciation. And I remember catching that thought, like, this is different. Wow, I'm like so much more. And I think I'm a pretty loving person. But I was shocked. I was shocked that like my private thoughts were like celebrating this person and how awesome they were. And I didn't have that kind of competition or inadequacy that was my usual undercurrent. But I say all of that to say, like, no matter how you cut it, I think one of the gifts of this that we're doing is that we all get to come to the table with more love and more compassion. And that only allows more freedom for me, for you, for both of us. And so, yeah, I love this field.
Yeah. Well, one of the great things I love about listening to your podcast as well, and you go into this a bit and on your website too, but you often are blending evidence-based tools with more soulful or intuitive approaches. So what helped you trust that that was the way to go about your pursuits for this? How did you know that blending science and spirit actually belonged in the same, what you call it, actually belongs in the same container?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. And that I don't know how this answer will continue to change, but interestingly, when I first started, it was almost like a resistance or like a rebellion against science. I'm like embarrassed to say that, but everything in science is like evidence-based, mind, logic, doing, execution. And I felt like it lacked the softness, the being, the love, like the soft stuff that people make fun of. And like the science that there was, I think I was scared that people would think it was pseudoscience or it wasn't real or it wasn't powerful. And so I think it was a mix of both, like me not feeling like it was, I want to say like excellent enough or like good enough.
Yeah.
And also this like rebellion of like, gosh, we're so clinical and cold sometimes. Can we just put some like warmth in here? And I just want to do the art piece and the humanitarian piece. And I remember, let's see, in 2025, I was invited to a medical conference to give a talk. And I was practicing it with one of my colleagues. Her feedback to me was like, this is beautiful, but it's too in the clouds. Like, I need something a little more real, a little more grounding. Where is the science behind it? And when she said that, it really helped me open my eyes to like, science is not the enemy. Science gives us language to understand these things. It gives us the mechanism, the how, like, just like we need both day and night, we need the science and the art. Each one of them are beautiful, and I'm not discounting either one. The science alone is powerful. The art, the humanitarianism is powerful. But I think there is a real special holistic approach when you have room for both. For the structure, and that's what the science gives us. And then inside it, where like the connection and the fluidity lives. And that's just like life, I think.
Yeah.
Same with your journey, I think, Amanda, where you experienced both in your evolution of getting to know yourself more and all the fluidity, but then also giving yourself that structure to make it a real journey that can impact other people and kind of marry both.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad that you're finding a great way to blend the two. So that way, if one person's not used to the other side, or they're more used to one or the other, where they're mostly soulful, but they needed the science, or the vice versa, they mostly only listen to science and needed a bit more joy and light and soulfulness. Like you're doing a really good job that blends both without feeling threatening or disheartening to either side of the spectrum. So I think that's really great. For anybody that's listening right now, though, and they're going through, a really difficult, lost season, maybe they're burnt out, they're disconnected from themselves or their job or their relationships, they're quietly grieving themselves and grieving who they thought they were going to be at this point in their lives. A lot of us, when we're in those types of positions, are trying to just hurry up and skip to the good part. We're trying to hurry up and not feel this way anymore because we don't really want to sit in that moment. So for anybody that's listening and they're in that lost season, where do you believe they can actually start healing? How does the healing process really go? And what signs should they be paying attention to?
Yeah. Firstly, I just hold space for those people. I know you've been through it, Amanda. I've been through it, and I'm sure we'll probably encounter another iteration before our journey is done on this planet with constant growth and like death and rebirth cycles that we all go through. So just letting them know that they're not alone, that nothing has gone wrong with them or their lives, and that it is a tender time and that we're with them. And I think that, like, if I could only teach or tell or share one thing, I think that we judge so much. It's exactly as you said, Amanda. When you're uncomfortable, we want to rush through it. We want to get to the other side of it so that we can feel comfortable again. And I think that right there, without going on further, is just such an interesting thing to observe and to ask. Like, why do we do that? Other than it being uncomfortable in our body. But I do think that there are probably some inherited unconscious beliefs that when I'm uncomfortable, when I'm grieving, when I'm sad, frustrated, ashamed, embarrassed, that somehow something is wrong with me or wrong with my life. And we have these additional judgments on top of our suffering that just cause more suffering. So I love this idea that our life, and I got this from my very first teacher, Brooke Castillo, but she has this example where our whole life fits into a circle. And when I ask my students every year how much of that circle should be good and bad, most of them say something like 70-30 or 80-20, good, bad. And I kind of set them up with the language of good and bad because it's already so judgmental. But I think that is pretty telling, though, too, of exactly what we're saying. We believe that our life should be comfortable and happy. And we play with this idea that what if life was exactly 50-50? Like there was exactly like day and night, inhale, exhale. What if there was nothing wrong with it being exactly 50-50, and explore like what that means to them. But I say that to say that I think there's so much deconditioning we can do with our own judgments of our life. Like how can we reframe that grief? Yes, is that I lost something, but that also means that I really loved something. Like there was love there. It's not that it's a bad thing, or it's not that I should never touch it. It's just, how do I want to move through it? I think is the more powerful and interesting question, because we can't escape life. We can't escape the human experience. And we're all going to touch these uncomfortable moments in our life. And so who do we become because of them? How can we use it for us in our journey to be who we want to be, to impact the world how we want to impact the world? And think about that circle, and you think about cutting it in half. If you think about shrinking the uncomfortable half, you have to shrink the whole circle, which means my capacity for joy, for love, for growth also shrinks. And by the contrast, if I want to shrink the quote unquote good half of my circle, I'm going to have to, or expand, if I want to expand the good half of my circle, I'm going to have to expand the uncomfortable half. And so it's not that it's good or bad. It's just, what kind of experience do I want to have? And I also want to disclaim, I'm not about like toxic positivity and bypassing and gaslighting. There are seasons in my life where I wanted to shrink my circle. I didn't feel safe to be judged or be seen or be expressed or go through those uncomfortable things. And I intentionally shrunk my capacity for all of it to give myself the time that I needed. But the difference is I did it for me. I wasn't doing it to run away from my life or from the experience. I did it to support myself through the experience, from a place of like love and choice and empowerment. And I think that if we can make those decisions to have our own back, then like let it look like whatever it's going to look like, but you're doing it from the highest place of power and creation and love. Did I even answer your question?
I think so, yeah. Where does healing actually begin? And I think overall the root to your answer is that you have to address whatever it is that's truly bothering you, and then figure out the circle percentage with your metaphor there. Like, I can only heal once I realize what I want my circle to look like. Do I want it to be 50-50? Do I want it to be 80-20, or vice versa, whatever it ends up being? But how do I make sure that I can create that circle without inadvertently shrinking it back down, either through my own ignorance or through selfishness or through like avoidance things, So I think you really can only walk out of your lost season by moving forward, really. And the hardest part of that too is you were starting to bring this up, and I want to tap into it, but especially because you brought up avoiding toxic positivity and just telling people, you're doing so much more with your clients and with your platform than just saying you need to believe in yourself. Like, obviously, everybody has to have self-confidence. Everybody has to believe or be a little bit delusional that they're going to get where they need to go in order to get there, right? Like, nobody's going to champion you the way you're going to champion yourself. And at some point, yes, we all have to have our own self-trust. So I completely agree with that. But I love that you're going at it at a place that's so much deeper than just believe in yourself. You're an amazing human. So I'd love it if you could talk a little bit further. What does actual and real self-trust look like when somebody's nervous system has just been living in that survival mode? Like, they haven't really thought about what it would mean to let go and unclench and try this exercise, like you talked about, trying the resetting your circle and figuring out what they would do if life truly was just 50-50.
Yeah. And I do want to just go back to that and just say, like, yeah, the philosophy is to contemplate if life always is 50-50. Like, we can't force it to be 80-20, 70-30. And like, nothing has gone wrong with that. 50-50 is perfect. 50-50 is beautiful. 50-50, like, what if you could have peace with 50-50?
Yeah. So how do they find that?
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, like, that is the first step in contemplating, like, what resistance, when you contemplate right now, to all the wanderers out there, what if my life is meant to be 50-50? What comes up? And like, you can journal it, you can talk about it with a friend, you can work with Amanda or me. Like, what is the resistance to it being 50-50? And right there, you'll already start to get nuggets of like, but it should be this, but what about that? Those are the beautiful little entry points for you to start contemplating more, for you to bring up your beliefs and where did you pick them up from? And do you want to still believe that? And it's okay if like that's what you want to believe, that life should be 80-20. These girls are nuts. But the point is to give yourself the choice to believe it. And choice is where our power comes from. And I think a lot of this self-improvement work and moving through life and moving through grief and onto the next stage, I believe the most healing way we can do that is through our own power, our own personal power, not circumstantial power, not, manipulating the circumstances, but like, even in the circumstances, finding peace, finding forgiveness, finding love. And then we can decide how we want to navigate, how we want to do things from a place of pure freedom, because we're not trying to run from something or fix something. And that's how we can ultimately co-create. I got lost on a tangent and not answering your original question.
It's okay.
Of how do we,
yeah. We're flowing. We're having a good time. We're absorbing the light. It's okay.
But back to the self-trust, which I think was part of the question.
Yes. How do you build self-trust when you've just been stuck in survival mode? How do you learn to trust yourself again? Because I think a lot of us, me especially, I think I really struggled with my intuition or understanding what messages were coming to me. It felt like just like knots in my stomach. It felt more like the grief process rather than my gut trying to just tell me, like, trust your instincts. You feel this pain because you're not listening to what I'm telling you. You're not following through on what you already know the answer to be. I didn't know if you had any particular insights into how can someone rebuild their own personal self-trust and follow through on it.
Yeah, I think two things, which one thing I just want to call out, which you said so beautifully, is that your body has information for you. So of course we're talking right now. Maybe listeners are listening with their mind. Maybe they're listening a little bit with their heart. Maybe both. But I think what you said is also important to know, that we are also flesh and body. And what messages is our body also trying to tell us? That life is always speaking to us. And that's why in the randomness of life, something might ping me more than you or hurt me more than you, because there's something in there that is speaking to me. I think we often see the world through our wounds and through the things that the lessons we're here to learn or the things that we're here to heal. And if we can look at it like that, like nothing has gone wrong, this is here for me, then there doesn't have to be an against for there to be a for. Everything can just be for me, for my information, for my clarity, for my growth. And I think that is such a different way to look at it than like I'm fighting against something, I'm a victim to something. It's like, this is, how can I look at this for me? But that takes a lot of safety. So this is what I wanted to respond to your question about survival. I in this field or industry, I think it's like consciousness is like such a gateway to all these other different branches.
Yes.
And yeah, and you like hear the word energetics thrown around so much. So I was like trying to understand like what even is energetics? Where does that come from? And again, didn't realize there's actually all these scientific fields about it. But one of the very basic things that I was trying to appreciate was that going back to just our biology and making space that we are human and we are creatures is that I'm a simple person, Amanda, so I break things down simply.
Sure.
And I think that this earth school is like a lot of duality or polarity. So if we break it down into the two most extremes, it's like we're either surviving or creating. And what's the difference between the two? So if I am just fending off the environment for me to survive, then all of my attention, all of my resources go to being focused, to being narrowed, to being contracted, and kind of defending myself for my life. Versus if I can find the safety to actually relax and to be present and to know that I'm not in the survival state, then I can start to allow the energy to move towards creation. Maybe that looks like imagination, following your intuition. But I think at the base of that, like how do I make that transition? How do I go from survival into creation? I think, and my answer might change in time, but my contemplation right now is just creating safety.
Yeah.
How do I create safety? I think is going to be really dependent on each person and what their situation is. And of course, earlier when we were talking about not manipulating your circumstances, like I just want to also disclaim, I'm not saying to stay in an unsafe or, in an unsafe environment. Of course, like everyone deserves safety and dignity. But I think sometimes it's easy for us to be in like a blame culture and want to change everything outside of us in order for us to feel like relaxed and happy. And I think to some degree you could say the same about safety. So if someone's criticizing me at work, or I don't know, like the podcast gets like made fun of or rejected or something, I feel othered or whatever. It's like, is that really a threat to my life? No, but it's going to feel like it because the emotion might be the same of like rejection, fear, doubt. And this is where being aware, awake, conscious, I think is really helpful to allow, like in the beginning for me, it was like really simple, but I would just have to be aware and say, okay, like I feel my heart beating, I feel my palms sweating, I feel my stomach in knots, and I would literally have to do like this, put my hand on my heart and my belly and take a big deep breath and tell myself out loud, you are safe. You are safe for someone to disagree with you. You are safe to speak up. You are safe to be judged. And I would just have to say that out loud. Like I actually remember years ago when I had first learned about trauma. I didn't know what it was. And I had only judged my life's trauma as like, I was never in some violent situation. And so I kind of dismissed what was impactful for me, and just learning about trauma and the trauma response and allowing myself to witness my own experience and know that these reactions weren't like dramatic or over the top. And gosh, Saidie, why are you being, like this? Why can't you just speak up like everyone else does? But I would really have this somatic bodily fear of speaking. And that's how I started, was just the awareness of it. And then just slowly rewiring it. And it'll never go away. I know it will never go away. I'll always be human. There will be new things that I'll be scared of. And I think the difference though is, instead of like running from the fear or trying to fix the fear or like change the person or the circumstance so I don't have to feel the fear, hence shrink the circle, how can I just do that? Breathe, be aware of my thoughts, give myself like loving support, and still, even with the fast heartbeat and the sweaty palms, say what I need to say, because I have given myself like a breath, a grounding breath. I have returned myself to the present moment. And then be able to, do what I need to do. And that might look a variety of different ways. There are trauma-informed, trained people out there. Of course, there's all these kinds of beautiful somatic therapies and all kinds of things that, if it speaks to you, I would encourage you, if that's something that you're moving through, processing trauma or fear, that is a painful but beautiful and necessary season for you. And that there is help out there available, and that it is something that you can develop cues and systems to breathe and ground through, and I'm sure other modalities that I don't even know about. But I think until you can do that, like that is the most important first step. And then after you have some internal safety, then you can learn how to work with the doubt, with the judgment, with the fear, because it will always be with us.
100%. I completely agree with that. And I like how you talked about even you being like a high achieving, incredibly self-aware person still struggled with discounting your own experiences, especially the trauma related stuff. Because I know when I first started the podcast, one of the biggest impediments to me even wanting to do a show and talk about my life on the show was because I kept telling myself, nobody wants to hear this story. You didn't actually have that traumatic of a time. Like, leaving your job wasn't actually terrible. Like, they didn't fire you, nobody yelled at you, like you weren't kicked out on the street like a cartoon. Like, what you have to say isn't actually that awful. You know, oh, you had a pretty good childhood. You have very supportive, loving parents who are still married. Like, you live in a life that most other people on the outside would be envious of. So how dare you act like something is wrong, or how dare you think that this isn't good enough, or that you don't have enough, or you're not actually, I don't know, I was constantly discounting what actually made me feel bad. And I blamed it on, maybe I'm not a victim, but I'm too soft or I'm too sensitive. And like, it's just going to appear weak rather than appearing vulnerable and honest. And so a lot of that, when I first started, when you were talking about that, you're just learning how to speak up for yourself. It was one of those that really triggered in my mind that memory of Amanda from years ago. One of the things she really struggled with was, why should I share my story if it's not actually that bad? And whose perception of bad was I listening to, right? Whose interpretation or definition of what is trauma to me versus to someone else, you know? And I think I had to kind of get over myself a little bit. Like, one, as soon as you start sharing and you are actually start opening up and being vulnerable, that's when people resonate with you the most. And that's when I felt like myself the most, was when I was actually honest about being scared and being upset and being frustrated and being in this place that I didn't like. I didn't want to be depressed. I didn't want to be frustrated and angry and disappointed with my life. But I was, right? And that still fluctuates as a feeling for me. But I really like that you brought that up, that somebody like you would, which I'm sure many people are going to resonate and see themselves in your story. A lot of high achieving people can be incredibly self-aware and yet still feel stuck, whether that's because they're scared or because they don't want to be vulnerable or whatever it may be. So I'd love it if maybe you could tap in a little bit more into your kind of origin story too, and like, why do you think self-awareness and insight alone is not enough to create the transformation that you're talking about?
Yeah. And I just also want to reflect back to you and your story too before we continue, but because I think you found something that is a really beautiful way to carry through that stuck feeling. You know, we're talking about feeling safe and not being able to race the human experience. Like, okay, yeah, sure, I can try to feel safety and I'm safe to speak up. I'm safe for someone to be wrong about me. And it's still really freaking uncomfortable. And still a lot of people might not be able to like even move past that. But what you were saying, just to put a little like more language or how I interpret it, is you found purpose. You found this belief that there was someone on the other side of the screen, that no matter what you judged as small and whatever, it wasn't that big of a deal, someone on the other side is in pain, and that spoke to you and that moved you beyond yourself. As you were saying, I had to get over myself, but really getting over yourself was getting for someone else. It was like, you know, believing in their possibility and their healing and their what was available to them. And I think that is such a beautiful like and simple tool that if the wanderers are still struggling with like, okay, I feel, I don't know, like okay with this human experience, I can get myself through it, but I still feel scared, I still feel stuck. Maybe that's something else that they can think about, the why. Why is it that I want to speak up? Why is it that I want to create this project or change this dynamic? Because the why will lead them to their purpose. And that will be a beautiful mechanism to carry the fear, the judgment, the pain in a such a beautiful way that can help them with momentum, with moving. I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to get it. I'm going to try anyways for you. This is important. So yes, I'm scared. And now what? Because this is still important to me. I'm going to try scared anyways. I'm going to let people judge me anyways, because this is bigger than my fear. So I just wanted to point you out to your own wanderers and to all of us, that as such a beautiful example of using your purpose to move and to overcome your stuckness.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's speak to them directly then. And I appreciate you always calling it the Wanderers. Most of the guests don't normally do that. So I appreciate you wanting to connect with them directly. So if there is someone listening right now and they have outgrown an old identity, but they are scared to step into the next version of themselves, what would you want that person to remember about the in-between moment when they are, I've talked about that messy middle? What do you want someone to remember about how to survive or how to get through or how to appreciate probably that in-between?
Yeah, I guess one of the first things I would want to say is, what if it was possible that you were exactly where you were meant to be? What if nothing has gone wrong? What if this is like the greatest freaking ride of your life? And it's only like in 10 years that you'll be able to look back and be like, oh my God, that version of me, she was so scared and she was so lost. Can you believe how brave she was? Sometimes I love doing that practice, using my future self and my past self to look at my current self, because it unlocks so much more compassion or wisdom, and releases those judgments of like, why is this hard? Why can't I get this done? Why isn't this turning out the way I wish that it would, and we have so much pain around the messy middle. And like, what would your 80-year-old version self look back and tell you if she could talk to you right now? Like, what would she say? What would the 10-year-old self who like is looking up to you like, oh my God, I made it that far? Holy smokes. What would she or he say? And pulling upon some of those different perspectives, which I think, yeah, there is some psychology research in like narrative identity and kind of storytelling. So all of that is available to us if we're awake and aware to it, and we choose to use it to support ourselves through it. I think we kind of spoke to the arrival fallacy, but it's like, what is the rush? Another interesting question you can ask yourself is, why am I such in a rush to get out of this or to see this thing through or to whatever? What do I think I will feel on the other side? And to know that the circumstance is neutral. So if I don't know, launch podcast number 100, what is it that I think I'm going to feel? Proud of myself? How can I, while I still hold that goal, and I'm not saying we should drop our goals, I'm not saying we shouldn't push, I'm not saying we shouldn't be excellent. I think those goals and having high standards and wanting the best is a beautiful way to push ourselves. But it shouldn't be at the expense of ourselves. Like, it's true that you can want to get out of the messy middle and have that relationship, have that job, have that title, have that thing. And you can still be in the middle while you're pursuing it with so much awe for your life, with so much gratitude for all that you have overcome and all the dreams in your heart that you have. I mean, imagine someone else in your position, they might not even have a dream that you have. It's a gift to even have a vision of yourself beyond the messy middle. How can we even reframe the beauty that is in your life, the wabi-sabiness of it? Because you do want more, and you do want to change, and you do want to disrupt things and deconstruct things. And how freaking strong are you that you're able to do it? You would never know your strength if you're going to the gym lifting 5 pounds. But when you challenge yourself at your max and you feel the soreness and you feel the DOMs and whatever, that is when you experience your strength. So maybe the messy middle is another opportunity for you to really feel the fullness of your courage, of your grief, of your love, of your forgiveness, of your depth. Because when everything's easy, that's not bad. And how much are we living when it's just easy and we're on autopilot? I think the point of all of this is to say, you are so powerful. You are the ultimate creator. What is it? If it's going to be like this, now what? I think that's such a great question. Like, now what? Now who do I want to be? Now, what do I want to do? Now, what do I want to like create from this is so different than like trying to fix something because it's broken, trying to rush out of it because it's bad. That makes us kind of bypass our life and not have space for our humanity. But if this is a beautiful chapter of becoming and evolution, now what? Now, how do I want to create out of the ashes? And that might sound too idealistic for some listeners, and like that's okay too. That's what I love about this field. There's so much room for diversity of thought and storytelling. And no one's right or wrong. Like that's the point. You get to create whatever you want to create, despite your circumstances.
I love that perspective too, because essentially you're going right back to if everything went that well in your life all the time and everything was perfect, you were always happy, you always had exactly what you wanted when you wanted it, then how do you ever know who you are? How do you ever know how strong you really are? If you're never actually challenged or you're never put in a place where you would need to grow or you would need to expand or break apart to put yourself back together, how do you actually know what you can achieve if you never actually see that? So running away from the messy middle is actually the opposite thing of what you're supposed to do when you're stuck in that in-between period of your identity journey. That running headfirst into the thing that scares you the most or looks like the most difficult obstacle is it. That's how you test who you are and figure out what you can and can't do and what you're willing to put up with or not. And I love that. I like that you're trying to challenge us to think about that a bit differently. When you're imagining an ideal client or an ideal person that you want to work with for your coaching business, and they want to figure out how to finally and fully return to themselves, they're not performing, they're not proving things to anyone, they're not shrinking anymore. What are they doing, or what are the changes that are going to first happen? What are maybe the signs where you can start to realize, okay, I'm on the right path. I am fully returning to myself.
That's a great question. I've actually never really fully contemplated that one. And I imagine that for each one of us, it might look a little bit different. I think, or I wonder if some of the core experiences that people might have is more peace. We say connection to self, but what does that really look like? For some people, that might be because they're connected to themselves, they are willing to express themselves in their art more or be a little more funny and let loose because that's who they are. But I guess what I'm saying is their authentic expression of who they are. If they were in a room with people who only loved them and celebrated them and everything was easy, who would they shine and be in those moments? And how are those little bits and pieces being reclaimed in the daily life when it's not a room full of lovers, maybe a room full of haters, or moments that are more difficult? But I think even before that, to be honest with you, and I don't know if this happened to you too, Amanda, but there's a time of my life where I'm like, wait, who am I? What do I even like? Were you the one who was telling me about the runaway bride scene, right? Where she doesn't remember where...
Probably, yeah. Where she's trying to figure out the eggs and she can't answer the question because she's been with so many different men that she would just do whatever they wanted. And so trying to make the choice of, I don't actually know what I like. Yeah. It really triggers you and goes, oh my God, I don't even know a simple answer to a question.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's where it starts. And how do you even get to that point? And how did we even get to the point where we are so wanting to please the people around us and give up our own preferences? What are we thinking we're gaining? You know, approval or safety or whatever. So I wonder if the first things that you might notice are feeling curious with yourself, feeling safe enough with yourself to try little things, feeling it's like a relationship you would have with anyone else where you would think about them even. When was the last time we even thought about ourselves? Sure, we rush to put on our clothes on today because we got to get dressed, but when was the last time you thought, whew, what would make me feel like alive? And I think this is maybe a little bit, I don't want to say this as morbid, but I will say last summer I had a family member passing away, and I had the whole summer, I had this recurrent thought of, what if I only had 120 days left to live? And the way that I drank my coffee was so present. It was so different. I didn't pick the mug that was most convenient. Like I actually picked the one that brought me the most joy, that I love the most. It wasn't okay for it just to be like, how do you say tibio? Like lukewarm. It had to be the temperature I liked and the creamer that I liked. And I think through those things of like man, what if this was the last meal I had? What if this is the last time I got dressed? Does that allow a little more permission for your truth to come out, for your preferences to come out, like to let life touch you, to be open to being more present with it? And what is that? How does that look like? If this was the last email I sent to this person, would it be a little funny? Would it be like, this person doesn't even deserve like my attention. Let me just knock this out so I can actually live. But I think those moments force you to be more honest with yourself and just provides another way to get to know yourself just by putting on a little bit of, not fake pressure, but in a way that awakeness or awareness that nothing is guaranteed for us. Here's another invitation for your wanderers. For this week, try every day asking yourself one time a day, what if this was the last time I could do this? Maybe it's brushing your teeth. Like, it doesn't even have to be something extraordinary. How would you brush your teeth if it was the last time? Would you really feel every bristle and the taste of the toothpaste? And maybe you realize, I don't actually really like this toothpaste. I would buy myself the sparkly bubble gum that the kids like. But I think that's the way you can know yourself, is by really being honest in that way of like, if this was the last time, what would I really want this to look like or be like?
Yeah, that's a really deep question that you got to sit with yourself and think about it. But I agree, if you answer that and then follow through on it, the freedom you would feel, it would build on itself. It would compound, I think, over time if you approached each question to yourself in that manner. I love that. Well, Saidie, we are getting close to our hour, so I want to switch over to our core questions. These are the ones I typically ask all of our guests. And what do you want out of life, and have you found what you're looking for?
This could be a whole other episode.
I know.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Well, we can do a part 2 if you want.
It's okay. What do I want out of life? Man, that has so many answers. Okay, this is going to sound real cheesy, Amanda.
That's
I
okay.
want to live. You know what can you feel that? Like, live. Like, I want the whole experience, the ups, the downs, the fullest, biggest circle I can make with all of the most comfortable emotions and all of the most uncomfortable emotions. I want to know that I fully lived. I gave myself the permission to fully live. And
I love that.
how did you know that you found it? What was the second part?
Yes. And have you found what you're looking for?
I'm going to say, like we were talking about earlier with duality, I'm going to say both yes and no. I'm going to say in every moment, like in this conversation with you and being fully present and seeing your beauty and allowing you to touch me, like, yes, I have lived it in the simpleness and the just of presence and seeing the life, and not judging it. And now what? Back to that question of now what? I think every day, as long as I have one more day, asking myself, what is it that I want to experience today if it was my last? And allowing that to be the no that leads me to the yes of today. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. So how do you define...
What's your answer?
My answer? What do I want out of life? Every time I think about that question, I think about Beyonce has a song where she opens with, oh no, I'm ruining it because I'm blanking in my head. But she opens one of her songs with, essentially she's at a competition and the MC is asking her, like, what is the key to life? Or, what do you want out of life? And she said, to be happy. And then it goes into the rest of the song. And it's a song that's about how difficult that actually is to get, to what is your ultimate goal in life? To be happy. Because that's something people struggle with all the time. And so I think for me, at this moment in my life, what do I want out of it? I want to find a way to wake up and be happy, because I don't always feel that way. And that's not a judgment on necessarily the circumstances that I'm in, or that I feel ungrateful for the circumstances that I'm in. But there's a part of me that still feels like me, the person, the sense of self isn't fully there yet. And I feel like I still need to piece those things together. So I want to find a way to be happy. And then, have you found what you're looking for? No, because the duality, yes and no. Yes, I have found it because I have this creative outlet that through the podcast that has helped me so much and moved me forward in ways that I never really thought I needed to do or thought I could achieve. But no, I haven't found it because the show hasn't impacted enough people. I want hundreds of millions of listeners. I want thousands of people to come to we talked about this last time about how I want to turn the podcast into like a conference. I want people to participate and feel like they have the freedom and the ability to find their purpose and live a life where they actually feel happy as well, despite everything that's going on, despite how difficult life actually is, and the good and the bad and the ugly. So that's what I'm hoping for out of life right now. But I'm living in that same duality, kind of like what you talked about. The answer is yes, but it's also no.
It gives us something to wake up for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I love that you're using it as information for who you want to become. It's not a problem that you're not there yet, because you know where you have. That gives you clarity to where you're going. It gives you purpose. You wake up and do it again.
Yeah.
And get that 100 million. And let us time. Don't forget about us when you're at the 100 million.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well,
I know you won't. I know
it'll be a long way away. Yeah. No, you will definitely not be forgotten.
Maybe it won't be, honey. It might not be it might be tomorrow. You never know what could happen. But what I was going to say is, I know we'll still matter to you then.
Yes.
But also allowing us to matter to you now just as much as then. You know what I mean? Enjoying the moment while we're still, soaring and achieving all the things we want to. Using it for you. There doesn't have to be an against to be a for, just for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then your final question, so we can get you on out of here. What advice do you have for people who are feeling lost and they need to make a change in their life, but they're not entirely sure where to start?
Ooh, man. So I guess so many different things come up. Even that exercise. What if this was my last year? Does that open you things up to like cutting away the bull? I don't know if we can cuss the BS.
You can, it's fine.
Like the bullshit in our life of like, where are we people pleasing? Where are we giving our things away? I guess if you don't know where to start, or you don't know where you're going, or you don't know how to start to get there, but you do know where you're going.
I mean, just in general, like you're lost with your life. You posted something recently on your Instagram about if you're stuck in that career change, feeling lost in a career change is not a failure. What if it's the sign that you're doing it exactly right? And that reel I really like. I'm going to link it for everybody so they can go and watch it. But I resonated with that a lot, because that is how the podcast got started for me. Like it was the career change that really kind of pushed me out of my normal element. And that deeply lost, frustrated version of myself was because I had given up that old identity. I knew I needed to change. I knew I needed to get out of there. I knew I needed to stop walking the path I was walking, but I didn't fully know where to start. So it took little things for me, right? Just interview one place.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the perfect example of listen to life. Life is always talking to us. So what is it saying? And maybe getting curious about, what does that mean about me, about what I like, about what is impactful to me, knowing that it could be different tomorrow, in 10 years, knowing that it's not the full story. If you would have known that in 3 years from now, you'd have 100 million followers or listeners, and you'd have a retreat going, and you'd have a multi-million-dollar brand with global impact, holy smokes, you probably wouldn't have started, because you'd be freaking terrified of how do I make that happen? But for you to say, wait a minute, this conversation is important to me. Maybe there's one person out there it's important to too. Okay, that is aligned with my path. It's going to lead to this, which is going to lead to that, which is going to lead to that. And I think sometimes the best thing for us is actually not to know, is just to live in the moment, let it unfold, let it pull out the things in us that are needing to come out. Like you said, that we might not even know that need to come out. But that's the dance and the surrender and the surprise of life that I think builds our character, builds our mission. It clarifies us, either through contrast of whoa, okay, I tried this thing, it was really the wrong path. That's information. It's not a failure. It's not a loss unless we allow it to be wasted. But either through contrast or through yes, validation, this resonates. Okay, this one podcast, this one interview, that felt good. I'm going to do a second one. And here you are a few years later.
Yes. Yeah.
A little over
and 2.5. Yeah.
2.5 years later, and with all these podcast episodes, with all this network, with a vision of your retreats, of ideas in your mind. So yeah, I think that we probably judge being lost too harshly. Where can we reframe it? That nothing has gone wrong, and we're in a season of exploration, and just being aware, not forcing answers that don't fit. I think because uncertainty is uncomfortable, we force answers that don't fit, and we stay in things that don't fit. And I think that is this emotional intelligence, this inner game of self-development really gives you those internal skills to hold the ambiguity, to hold the uncertainty, to create the internal safety, to accept life for the 50-50, not trying to force it to be something else, and really grows your personal power. Yeah.
This is awesome. Saidie, I feel like you've poured into me so much. So I just through our own interactions on your show and on this show, but I really hope anybody that's listening to this episode feels the same way I do when they listen to you, and you feel empowered, and gosh, you feel okay with the fact that you're not okay right now, but you will be, right? Like it's wonderful. So please let everybody know how they can interact with you, or if they want to work with you or participate with anything that you're doing with your particular projects in this space. How do they find you? Let everybody know.
Yes, I have a little gift for your listeners. It's at soulshine.global/podcast gift, all one word. It's just like a little 10-minute activation for self-trust and kind of accepting all the parts of us so that we can move forward with them. I would love to gift that to you. And anyone who is feeling more curious and working a transition in their life, wanting to build a relationship more grounded in self-trust and wholeness, anyone who's looking to find more beauty and gratitude in their life, it doesn't have to only be women. It can also be men, but I would be honored to work with you. You can go to soulshine.global and find our email and find a group program and some private programs and more to come in this 2026 year. On Instagram as well at soulshine_global to follow the little musings that life gives us. So thank you to Amanda. Thank you for holding the space. For all of us wanderers, may we always be a little lost. May we always be a little found.
A good mix. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you too.
Of course. And everybody, I will make sure to put all of Saidie's information into the show notes. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, rate us, leave a review. Share this on your own social media. Share this with friends, family, anybody that you think could benefit from the show and benefit from the topics that we've brought up today. You should check out Saidie's podcast as well. It really resonated with me on multiple occasions when I was dealing with all sorts of different either self-confidence or doubt or concerns about a particular issue I may have been going through. Listening to her show is it's almost meditative. So I think you're really going to love it. If you love this show, you should check hers out as well. So everything will be linked. You can find me at hello@podcastforthelost.com. You can check out the website, which is podcastforthelost.com, and all of our social media is always Podcast for the Lost on all platforms. So everybody check that out, and remember, wanderers are always welcome.